Halls are being decked the nation over as we're all preparing for the most wonderful time of the year. Yes, I'm as excited for Jimmy Buffett's birthday as the rest of us, but we also have some business to attend to about a chimney or something. The holiday season is one of the most magical times of the year. We all survived Thanksgiving, the beta test to Christmas, and to celebrate we all hassle an old man for a PS5. The time of giving, being with those you love, and getting to indulge in all those traditions we've come to know and love. Decorating the tree, playing Christmas songs on repeat until your nose bleeds, hanging the mistletoe if you've got a real sicko in your family, and maybe the most important, watching Christmas movies. Halloween and Christmas easily hold the record for the most holiday-themed films, although, if we're being honest, Arbor Day has been a strong number 3 for a while now. And it's tradition to gather up the whole family and watch some classics like the Rankin Bass holiday specials, National Lampoon, Christmas Story. Maybe not for 24 hours straight, but it gets to be there. There's an endless amount of films that you can make a holiday tradition out of watching. Something interesting, though, is that almost every single one of these have come from a world where the biggest concern was, what in the hell does the Mayan calendar know that we don't? Christmas specials are all about nostalgia, and it's very likely that your parents pass on the nostalgia of specials they love onto you. As such, there has not been a worthwhile Christmas film made in the past 20 years. Your tolerance for Will Ferrell-based shenanigans may carry Elf into the conversation, but for the most part, people hate new Christmas movies. That's not a thing I recognize! However, every once in a while, a film comes along with the ability to make someone feel like a kid again, and nestle itself into the hearts and minds of the public as a bona fide Christmas classic. Klaus, it's Klaus. Watch Klaus. The characters in that don't look possessed. The Polar Express is a classic children's book with a movie forcibly welded to it. Written by legendary children's book author Chris Van Allsburg, the same guy who made Jumanji and Zathura, The Polar Express is a staple of childhood storybooks, going all the way from a kid's front door to the North Pole on a magic train. The story was actually based on an experience from Chris's childhood, based on the idea of a child wandering off to follow a train in the middle of the woods. Missing persons case aside, The Polar Express is one of the most famous kids' books ever made, read aloud in classrooms as a bedtime story. It's an institution by this point, endlessly charming and a heartwarming tale. Then Hollywood happened. The Polar Express movie was a massive innovation. First off, it was one of the first fully motion captured movies to see a major Hollywood release, putting it in the vaunted company of Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Hey, look, I mentioned video games. See, we still talk about video games here. Please don't go. This was during a period of the 2000s where acclaimed director Robert Zemeckis was convinced he'd be the first against the wall when the robot uprising happened, and decided to make movie stars out of them to avoid being killed. He fell hard into the motion capture gimmick, becoming both the person who pioneered it and also the one who killed it. Polar Express, Monster House, Beowulf, A Christmas Carol, and Mars Needs Moms. They're most noteworthy for being varying levels of unwatchably horrifying. At their best, they're breathtaking displays of what visual effects are capable of. At their worst, they're the rest of the movie. Polar Express is on the lesser end of the spectrum. It's not Mars Needs Moms, but still, cartoon characters should not move the way these people move. I loved this movie when it first came out, so much that me and my family actually went on a real Polar Express themed train ride when I was in elementary school. But now, I don't know, man, there's something a little weird about the whole thing. Like, the animation is already a massive turnoff, but the movie kind of feels like it's fishing too hard to be a Christmas classic. For those of you who are fans of the scene in a movie where something bad is about to happen, but then it doesn't, and then the main theme plays, A Polar Express is actually the first movie where every scene is that scene. It's still cute and stuff, but I don't know, it's a little paint by numbers for a Christmas movie. Tom Hanks did a good job as the 20 characters he voices. He even motion captured the little boy until he was dubbed over. I want to cut to this movie with only Tom Hanks. I don't want Mandark, I don't want Mr. Noodle, I just want Hanksamania, which is incredibly funny when you consider the fact that Tom Hanks was one of the biggest voices against digital actors in the lead up to Spirits Within, so he decided to get ahead of the curve and try to become every digital actor. So it's a successful film released in the 2000s. You can guess a game was coming. Be happy I kept the background to just the book and the movie. I was so ready to recap the entire history of Christmas. The Polar Express game was released on November 2nd of 2004, predating the movie by a whole 8 days. Dude, what are you doing? You're gonna spoil the movie! The game was revealed at THQ's E3 2004 press conference, which is an incredibly weird look back to when companies like THQ could afford to show up at E3 and not get lumped into a big showreel at Xbox's game conference. The console version would be handled by Blue Tongue Games, who were the Beatles of budget licensed games THQ didn't want to make themselves. Not only did they make this game, but the tie-in game to Barnyard and all the Nicktoons crossover games, or as I like to call them, Next June. So, why are we playing a game like this at all? It seems like the sort of shovelware you ask your friends to play with you for a laugh and they give a very emphatic no. Listen, man, there's like 0 Christmas-themed games. It was either this or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer for Wii, which is a minigame collection with 4 minigames. I'm working with what I got here. So the game starts with... Oh dear God, no! I'm just gonna be using screenshots instead because this game doesn't really deserve me finding a more elegant solution like buying the distribution rights from Warner Brothers. Moving as quickly as possible past that, we have the menu with a disgusting 5 save files. No game should have this many saves, it's just against the natural order. I love the idea that 5 kids were gonna be killing each other just for the right to save their Polar Express game. I chose the 3rd save file because it looked the most uncomfortable to be there. I have to enter a name for the profile, so to make sure I have a competitive edge in the cutthroat world of Polar Express on GameCube, I named myself Mr. Jingle, but sadly didn't realize how much space I would have to work with, so when I wrote out my name it came out to Mr. Jingle, but thankfully the E is vestigial and can be hacked off safely. More movie footage comes afterwards, and they have the know-it-all kids say some stupid stuff like this is a model Baldwin 284 S3 class steam locomotive, when it's clearly a Pierre Marquette 1225 class N1284 Berkshire steam locomotive. What a dumb little f***er. Also, when watching these cutscenes, take a shot every time a character blinks, you will be miserably sober by the end. So because the devs couldn't find a way of making the process of doubting your belief in Santa Claus a viable antagonist, the villain is now an Ebenezer Scrooge puppet who is better at voiceover than I will ever be in my entire life.
It's toys that make Christmas fun, not Santa. Now, they certainly won't believe in Santa if they never reach the North Pole.
After that, there's a brief red flash to show something horrible has happened. No doubt the conductor jamming a kid into the train wheels for not having a ticket. The conductor, and by extension, the 50 other characters that Tom Hanks voices in this, are all voiced by professional Tom Hanks sound-alike and professional Tom Hanks' brother, Jim Hanks. That's usually fine, but when the clips from the movie juxtapose the other cutscenes, the difference in voices becomes really clear.
These tickets are not transferable.
Now that the track is clear, we need to get this train back on schedule. It's 5 minutes to midnight. We're cutting it awfully fine.
Hey, look on the bright side. This does only create 1 degree of separation between this and Kingdom Hearts 3. So the Scrooge puppet steals all the tickets from the children through holiday trickery and is gonna let the conductor finish the job by throwing them into the engine. How did he get all those tickets from the kids? You've officially thought too much about the plot. Please stop. As the hero of the story, it's up to us to go find those tickets and return them to their proper owners. Seeing as none of the characters in the game have names, I thought it would be nice to give them a few. George Washington, James Polk, William Howard Taft. I will update you on the names as I assign them. Getting to finally control things, I run to immediately shirk my responsibilities by running to the other end of the train. George controls just a little weird. All he can do is run and double jump with Christmas magic, but everything about him is just a little stiff. Jumping isn't instant, and the double jump is even worse. It's in the back of the train car I find coins, which give us an extra life when we collect 20 of them, and a toy part, which unlocks bonus features. See, the reason I gave God of War Ragnarok a 0 out of 10 is the fact that you can't unlock other game trailers in it. That's what's really missing from gaming today. After failing to jump off the train and nearly dying by spamming the R button to flip the camera back and forth, George moves on to the first train car where Scrooge tries to intimidate us, but it kind of gets snagged on a wall and loses the scare factor. Running down this hallway is incredibly frustrating since the Jack-in-the-Box is trying to hit us have really unfair hitboxes and will just smash into you whenever they feel like it. On top of that, as I quickly learned, you can't get health back. If you lose it, it's gone, and the only way to refill your health is to die. Christmas. Getting to the next train car, John Tyler wants us to help him find his ticket in a Jack-in-the-Box, and we have to check them all to find it. After blindly picking 3 times, Tyler gets so scared that he smashes me in the back of the head with his flashlight and kills me, forcing us to restart all over again. It's also here that I realized I was supposed to be paying attention to which boxes I had already opened, which was really bad news for someone who was only kinda paying attention to begin with. I still managed to get it, as now we have to kick soccer balls into baskets to subdue the kind of annoying puppets that keep us from moving on. If you can't tell, this game is kind of a minigame collection, where every train car is a different game to try to get your tickets back. Every train car, though, feels really cramped. There's little to no wiggle room. It's like the whole game takes place in a hallway. At the same time, though, yeah, it's a train. Oh, these train cars feel too much like train cars. On to the next train car, and George Washington squares off with the Scrooge puppet, and we have to win a food fight to pass. It's just standing on the right side of the car to hit him with food, and in a really fair move, the game only tells you how to dodge after you've been hit. Hey, f you right back, pal. So after we get Taft's ticket back, James Polk tells us she saw a little boy miss the train and is now chasing after it. We gotta pull the emergency brake to let this kid on, but Scrooge has different, soccer-based plans. He's also grown like 2 times in size since we last saw him. Why does he simply not become bigger and eat the train? It's the same as the soccer game from earlier, but Scrooge is throwing them out, so you have to dodge them and then kick them back. You'd think that how things are set up, he'd switch baskets to try to get the drop on you. No, actually, he's perfectly content. After a quick break to have some fun with the save screen, we get another movie clip as the ungrateful squirt boards the train. I'll name him William Henry Harrison on account of the fact that he looks frail and weak. Taft aggressively soy jacks at us as we move on to the next train car, where the sports puppet challenges us to tennis. We just need to get the ball past him 5 times in order to pass, which is very easy when the exact same trick works every time. Old Washington, though, is just too good of a sport and keeps trying to hit it to the guy instead of trying to win because Christmas. After that, we need to sneak through the kitchen car with a pissed off chef in it. He's upset because somebody wasted all the food he prepared. I'll be sure to get to the bottom of that. It's a super simple sneaking section. You just gotta duck behind the counters and make sure he doesn't see you. You can teabag the ground to show off your smug superiority, and heaven help you if he ever finds you.
Skedaddle, I'm busy.
Once we get the ticket back, he's placated by some music, and you can run through the kitchen with no problem. Oh, I'm about to make it a problem. I work at it for a little bit, but I am eventually able to become like a little parrot helper for him. Guys, I know a sequence break. If you get into the pot, you get to go to the warp zone. Trust me. On to the next cart, and it looks like Andrew Johnson is too afraid of fake mice to run across the room and get her ticket back, which means I'm gonna have to do it. If that sounds at all negative, trust me, it's not, because this section gives you a button that makes George Washington fall directly onto his face. This is fantastic. The next car is blocked off until you kill all the Jack-in-the-Boxes by throwing toys at them. The targeting indicator is more of a loose suggestion as to which direction your toy is gonna fly in, because there's a big likelihood it's just gonna soar right past them. This game is getting very uncomfortable with the amount of Jack hatred it's okay with showing, as now we have to smash some Jack-in-the-Boxes with a hammer. The audio in this section is so annoying. The hammer squeaks like a baby duck every time you hit it, the most stock Christmas music possible is playing, and the Jack-in-the-Boxes keep saying, "Guess who? Guess who? Guess who? Guess who? Guess who? Guess who? Guess who?" I have a pretty good guess at this point! The conductor nearly rips James Polk's head off after Scrooge steals her ticket and takes her up to the top of the train to powerbomb her off the side to her certain death. George can't have that, and then immediately finds the ticket stuck in an air vent. Scrooge already lost it. We climb up to the top of the train to tell the conductor to not murder that little girl, and that leads on to an incredibly long section of running along the train. You duck and dodge between passing bridges and water towers, but if I'm being honest, I don't really care about how long and frustrating this section is. It's the best part of the game. You'd think this would get old. No, it actually gets funnier. I would have taken back every mean thing I said about the movie if they didn't cut out the scene where George takes a Mach 5 brick to the face. This goes on for like 10 minutes, but it's the best 10 minutes of the game. Another movie scene starts up, which shows that after 10 minutes of straight running, we are still at the caboose of the train. Gee, I wonder why. After that, we meet up with Train Hobo, who represents ornaments? He tells us there's no way to get to the front of the train in time, which is an appropriate assumption, what with the futility of the past sixth of an hour I just wasted. Train Hobo skis with us down the hill to try to reach the front of the train, since this will somehow beat the conductor, who is on the train. All right, son, just hold on tight. We're gonna speed on to the North Pole. Oh, son, are you all right? Are you all right, son? I heard something snap. Are you breathing? Oh, he's not breathing. Oh, let me turn on my headlight real quick. Oh, I gotta find someone to dump this kid. This is bad. This is real bad. This section skiing down the hill is just as long as the train section and feels just as repetitive with all the repeated environments and 3 or so voice lines on loop, but when you can smash directly into a tree to relieve stress, it's not that bad. After Train Hobo tosses us like a football back up onto the train, we land in another cutscene where the plan fails and the most horrible bone-crunching sound ever plays. The conductor is making James Polk pay off her ticket with hard manual labor, helping these two incredibly scary engineers. The small one looks like he's designed to trap children inside of him. The train physically can't hold itself together anymore since it's being run by two morons, and their savior, a 7-year-old, has to dodge molten coal and grab 1,000-degree hot metal to toss it to him. You have to toss green parts to the left and blue parts to the right, and they need specific parts. So if you toss them the same part twice, they get all pissy and demand more of me. This is also the first time in the game that you can recover health, but seeing as you have to weave between boulders to get it, it's not exactly worth it. By the end, you'll only just need one more piece, but it will take forever to come out, and you just have to sit there on your thumbs and wait for it to come. If we want to make it to the North Pole on time, we all have to work together. Me, myself, and I all have to work overtime to get this train moving again. To do that, you have to play a rhythm section with no music. You have the sounds of engine backfire to keep you on the beat, and without prompting, the game wants you to use the D-pad for the first time. What's even worse is that later on, the song stops playing in tune with the button prompts, so you just sort of gotta hope that you know what to do. They know I can't do rhythm, they're trying to sabotage me! It goes on for way too long, and unlike the other sections that did that, this one isn't even funny. We aren't even allowed to stay up in the front of the train once we fix it. We gotta drag our sorry hides all the way back to the passenger car. Then the conductor ditches us, so we have to fight back all the horrors this devil train has to offer on our own, which are mostly just repeated sections we did before. The first section is the Jack-in-the-Box room, but at least this one has the benefit of an incredibly funny cutscene before it.
Look at all these rats. How are we ever going to be able to get through here? What was that? Don't worry. Sounds like we have some company. Just keep your head down. I'll take care of these toys. Once the coast is clear, follow me across the train car. Okay. Be careful.
After that is a sliding block puzzle where we have to help James Polk get to the other side of the train car by pushing boxes around. Now, it would have been nice if the game gave you any prompt that you could push boxes around, but that would just take away from the magic of Christmas. Honestly, it's not a bad sliding block puzzle, but the real highlight comes when George is infused with pure Christmas energy and ascends to Super Santa. Oh, I know I'm not breaking any new ground with this joke, but God is it funny. At the end of the train car, Scrooge takes my advice and decides to simply eat the children to stop them from seeing Santa Claus. George Washington also shows he very clearly understands the true meaning of Christmas, so I don't know why we have to stay on this god-abandoned train. You have to throw snowballs at him so he'll drop his guard and expose his heart, which the game cleverly teaches you to do by having every kid tell you how to do it at the same time.
Try jumping up when he shakes the floor. Try jumping up when he shakes the floor. Try jumping up when he shakes the floor.
I get it. The lack of music in this scene really sells the fact that we're all living in a nightmare right now. Well, despite a car of the train being little more than scrap metal and child blood, we decide not to press charges thanks to the promise of hot chocolate. Of course, it can't be that easy for poor George since we're down a single waiter, and without him, the whole operation is in danger of falling to bits, so George has to take his spot. It's the same as the rhythm game section from before, just with actual music this time. That music track, though, is also the fartiest song I think has ever been written. This is Donald Duck walking music. So we arrive at the North Pole with, let's just say, minimal interruptions, except William Henry Harrison won't get off the train because, well, honestly, he probably doesn't even celebrate Christmas and is too embarrassed to tell anybody he got on by accident. Washington and Polk go back to drag his sorry carcass off the train as the weight of a small boy stepping on a lever by accident is enough to disconnect the train car as they start rolling backwards. on a flat slope. We have to control the train car that doesn't have any controls on it by throwing Harrison against the walls to make it lean to either side to avoid potholes. No one in the North Pole seems to care that 3 children are barreling towards a grisly train crash death, as we have to duck out of the way of their cars. Come on, I have the right of way! This section is super easy, and there isn't really a lot to talk about. It's high speed, it's cool looking, it's probably the most fun section in the game, but Polar Express works on this sort of inverted bell curve where the better the game gets, the less I'm enjoying it. So once we land, we have to find a way out of this jolly hellhole and follow some elves into a big tube shooter and hop aboard to try to get out. You have a limited amount of time to match up colors with the cart that Polk helpfully calls out in case you weren't paying attention during the tutorial. Or look down. This goes on for 6 rounds, which is a maddeningly long time, especially with the Christmas music desperately trying to convince you you're doing a good job. Once the nightmare ends, you get shot out into a present packing facility where that coward William Henry Harrison starts running around, getting lost, which means we gotta drag him back by his eyelids. You have to pull levers around conveyor belts to get them to shift in a way where you can reach the end of the room, which sounds like a puzzle, but it's not. You just gotta pull the levers as you get to them and that will get you to the end just fine. These are the most unforgiving conveyor belts I've ever seen. They do not let you move an inch backwards, which leads to you constantly missing platforms and having to go back the entire way to the point you are already at. Also, how messed up is it that it clearly hurts to go through these tunnels if George screams out in pain every time he goes through one? Before we get the chance to throw Harrison into a meat grinder, we find out that the only way to get back to the train is to climb out this massive present tower. Climbing this thing with these controls is so much more difficult than it needs to be, with swinging ropes that are unwieldy and frustrating, hopping presents that can miss you by a mile and still hit you, and these springy boxes that launch you up in a very specific way, but give you just enough wiggle room to fail miserably. This is compounded by you falling off a platform and having to go all the way back down to a section that was 5 minutes ago. This game is a game of chicken between the developers and the player. Who's gonna give up first? The player who wants to put this down, or the devs who want to stop making it? These platforms are a nightmare to try to get past, cause your jump goes just high enough to make it look like you just missed it, but you sort of just click onto the platform anyway. After you get out, you get dragged onto an airship carrying Santa's sack to meet the warmonger of Christmas, who, despite being at least 9 years older than me, doesn't know how to pilot the ship he's in charge of, and tasks me, the only brain cell left on Earth, to get it to Santa safely. The final level is flying through the North Pole to drop off this incredibly upsetting sack to Santa, so we can finally leave and I can go home. This is honestly just a really boring section. Ships come out of nowhere in nearly unavoidable patterns. You have to move the ship through tight corridors. It's just not very fun. I smash a couple fragile presents on my way, but we did it! I personally saved Christmas! We get out of Santa's sack safely and get to meet the big man. Hey, wait! Get back here, you lazy bum! You owe me a visit, you no-good, lousy Saint Dick! We came all this way for nothing! Ah, forget this, I'm making my new holiday. It's gonna be cool, based around respecting me, and I'm calling it Turbo Christmas! You ghoul! So that was the Polar Express. No, really? Is it good? I pray you don't need me to tell you if this is good or not. Obviously, it's a quick slapdash job to cash in on the movie, but I'll be honest, I had an absolute blast. Just because something is clearly not good doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. I'm a Shadow the Hedgehog apologist. It's fine to get a kick out of something even if it objectively kinda stinks. That's half the fun. It's simple, yeah, but I'd say the hour and a half of gameplay this game gave me was well worth the time I spent laughing at the glitches, audio errors, and times where George took a header directly into the ground. Should you play it now? You know what? Yes, play this game with friends and have fun at the game's expense. It's only like $10 on eBay or, free! Make this your new holiday tradition. Gather around the fireplace and watch George float through midair through pure Yuletide joy. I swear it's worth it.